All right, there's this article that I heard tell about, so I went and checked it out myself over at The Guardian, written by Martin Bellum, I guess. Exterminate, why it's time for Doctor Who to die. He doesn't really answer that. He tosses around a bunch of excuses as to why it is now in utter failure, but not really why it's time. He just suggests that a solution to its current problems, which quite a few people had suggested, that maybe it should take a rest, not necessarily die, just take a break and be gone for a while. And I guess the thinking is that it'll seem fresh and new when it comes back. And just being old appears to be his main point as to why there's a problem. So he starts off talking about rumors about Jodie stepping down because this next season will be her third, and typically, for the most part, there's a few exceptions, that's when an actor leaves the role to make way for someone else. And he talks about the different people rumored to take the role and all that sort of stuff. Michaela Cole, Ali Alexander, which has already been pretty much squashed, and Richard Ayoade, I believe, who of the three, I'd go for Richard. But anyway, he goes about the history of it, how long it's run, and which is an achievement in and of itself, since 2005. And then, the television landscape has changed since, oh boy, and it can't compete with Netflix and Disney, and trying to make that a comparison for Doctor Who in the 70s, having to compete with Star Wars, which, man, it's amazing how it lasted till 1989, if that was the problem. And that wasn't really the problem. It was cheap, and it didn't have the budgets that shows from America did have, and that sort of thing. And talking about Mandalorian and Loki. Now, Loki, I guess it's better than current Who, but still, it's just, it had its moments. But when Mandalorian was actually pretty good. It is actually, a lot of it, the genius was in its simplicity. And but also, surprise, it gave the fandom what it wanted, But gee, what's the thoughts about the fandom? Well, he talks about how someone might notice something because now there's 16 years of new lore to stack on top of the lore from the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And every time there's a failure to adhere to continuity is some throwaway line from a script 10 years ago will send legions of fans into a frenzy, taking to their social media and YouTube channels, to shout about lazy writing. Sometimes it feels like the show is being buried under the weight of its own continuity. Yeah, well, don't worry about that, because Chibnall just destroyed it. It meant nothing. But this is the take. This is, the fandom is part of the problem here. And it's not as simple as he puts it, that, there's a line that doesn't correspond with something from 10 years ago, or they missed it, and that sort of thing. It's when you do something like Timeless Child, which just upends it all over the place. That's not an accident. That's intentional. Where you did a line and you forgot, that there was some other story that covered some simpler things, and that is a bit of laziness. I mean, you're in charge of a franchise. You should know that you're not going to catch everything. There's a lot of shows, and that's true. But for quite a few things, it doesn't quite work. And to just throw that away and say it's the fans' fault and that they're really silly and stupid for saying it's lazy writing, no, they're not. He throws in a line here where Whittaker's ratings are now as bad as Capaldi's were. Well, they're actually worse, so he's not really getting that. And that because she's cast as a woman, it became a pawn in the culture wars. Well, they never let her just be the Doctor. They wanted her to be a figure for culture wars and kept pushing that, and that's also the point of Timeless Child, and that, which is far worse than just having a female Doctor. And it never stood alone on that. It was just constantly that, which is odd considering Jodie Whittaker, the first female Doctor, and then you do a story, no, she isn't. So then he goes on about, it gets boring because how many times can the Daleks be destroyed and returned? Well, they don't always have to be the ones in the finale, but that's how Chibnall does it. So, it's incumbent upon the writer to come up with an innovative means by which certain villains and monsters are utilized within the show. You can't just say, gee, it's the same thing. Well, when it's the same thing, it's lazy writing, so that's not really the problem. Not quite. Because the show was really old before it even got started in 2005, so you could say it was a lot of stuff. But anyway, Chris Chibnall tried to lower the temperature slightly with his first season finale, which only featured a returning lesser-known villain threatening to destroy the Earth. It was widely panned as low stakes. Well, it's the whole Earth, but still. So that's what he's just saying it's tired, and that's the real problem. But no, it isn't. And he says, I've long accepted that Doctor Who will outlive him and all that sort of stuff. And the innovation of the time of sea praises this garbage and says it opens up in new directions. But you just said there aren't very many new directions. It's the problem is it's tired and it does the same thing over and over again. So I guess destroying that continuity, which is the basis of the whole show, and introducing this because now there'll be all these other doctors that could show up at a moment's notice. Well, that's not going to get old fast. It doesn't open up anything, and it's just God. It was talk about a lazy episode. So anyway, he talks about other ideas that aren't too bad. An anthology series. He talks about it for a few characters of the Who universe who aren't the Doctor. But one of the things I thought they could have done is sort of like this aspect that like Fargo did, and the TV series, and American Horror Story and that sort of thing, where each season could be a different cast, and that's so that you could contract talent that's a little more expensive or don't have the time for a full series commitment for 3 years or what have you. And you could have had someone like Tilda Swinton play a female Doctor in something like that, and it only would have been, 10 episodes or something like that. And you come up with these adventures in there for that Doctor and stuff like that to break it up. But it's in such bad shape now. I don't know. The one thing to keep it going would probably be a series of specials, which might only be like 4 a year. Something like that, or maybe tack on a 5th one for the holiday, whichever they decide which holiday is, PC enough for them. But anyway, so that's it. He thinks, giving it a rest for a while, and then someone who grew up with Christopher Eccleston as, their first Doctor or what have you, will be in charge of it and start a new era of Doctor Who, and it lives on and all that sort of stuff. Okay, fine. But so he's giving up the idea that, it'll continue after I'm dead, because when it stops, it might be a very long time to get it back on. And so that he's basically, this is it. It's pretty much over for anybody who currently enjoys Doctor Who. It's an IP that can be restored at some point, but you just might not live to see it. So there it is. But he doesn't deal with the real problem, is that the show became hyper-political. It became rather bigoted in its notions towards people, and was tokenizing characters. Just a Timeless Child is all that is. It's just blatant tokenizing. The Joe Martin Doctor, they just completely tokenized her and had no idea what to do with that going forward. It throws up all kinds of... There's some possibilities if you wanted to do something like that, if you had an actual map or plan, but Chibnall didn't. And which is terrible. And all this talk about who should be the next Doctor, well, why isn't it her? It just goes to show you all this type of cheap crap that they did. and then shamed people. It says, well, if you didn't, and even had Jodie Whittaker running around saying that the old show was all about the male gaze and stuff like that, just trashing it. And then wonder why everybody's all right. Well, bye. And in this article doesn't deal with any of that. Just says, oh, it's just a bunch of crazy fans and YouTubers. But why do something like this? Oh, is it perhaps guys like this are realizing, yeah, it's done, and coming up with a saving face excuse for it? Not that they called him up and had him do it. Well, maybe, but it's just the writing's on the wall. It's like this thing is terrible, and how can it keep going? And it's not making any money. The heights of David Tennant and all that when the merchandising was everywhere. It's all gone, and that's what brings in that extra sweet cash that a show like Doctor Who can do. But it can't do it that way now that it only excels editorially for the purposes of the BBC. Well, that's not a plan for success. So I guess Doctor Who's coming to an end one way or another. Will it make it to its 60th anniversary? I guess it's going to be a limping struggle to get there, but I don't know. So anyway, that's my guess here, that this is looking for an excuse other than the obvious one to explain what happened. The landscape of television's changed. Netflix and Disney Plus do it better. Blah blah blah. No. Thanks for watching and listening. Say, while you're still here, why not like and subscribe and share with your many friends? Yes. Also, check out my mini stores in the link description below. Yes, where you can get t-shirts, hats, mugs, all those goodies with my artwork on them. Oh, yeah. And head over to indieplanet.com and pick up a copy of my comic book, Night Night. Oh, yeah. You can also catch me at my podcast, Mr Nailsin Show, on RadioMisfits.com. And you can also watch my videos on BitChute.com and now on Rumble.com. Oh, my goodness, so many places to watch me and my stuff. Oh, yeah. And if that's not enough for you, well, you can follow me on many social media platforms and say hi to your old pal, Mr. Nailsin.